So my name is Anu. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I have been a mechanical engineer working in the field for around 20 years. My undergrad was in mechanical engineering from India. I went to grad school in the US for design for manufacturing, and I worked in everything from designed everything from fuel pumps to Kindles to tablets to robots. I think I have a patent on toilets. So, what I really like about my field is that mechanical engineering is all about building things, fixing things, problem solving, and it is very broad. The applications are just enormous, and I kind of like change. So, I like working both, working on kind of things like solar energy and solar panels to cars. So it's kind of a great field for me. It's been a great field for me because of the breadth that I can apply it to.
Wonderful. And Erin Kelly, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Erin Kelly. I am a senior manager of sustainable development and environmental permitting at BNSF Railway. And what I mainly work with is large hub facilities, or intermodal, meaning the intersection of trains and cars and how we move goods across the country. And I really love my job in my field because it's completely different every day. And in sustainability, it's constantly evolving. We're learning new things, we're adapting. So it's a really exciting place to be and a really fun field to work with. And I get to work with a lot with the different groups and engineers and really learn a lot of broad skill sets and get to put them together in a really unique way.
Wonderful. Our third panelist is Michelle Fowler.
Hi, I'm Michelle Fowler. My undergrad was in computer science and engineering physics that I got from the University of Michigan. And then I've been working in software development for the past 20 years. I started out as a programmer specializing in the high frequency trading space. And then in about the past 8 years, I've moved into management where I'm a director of IT at GATX, which is a rail car leasing company. So hi, Erin, we're in the same space. I think you guys use some of our cars and we definitely use your tracks. So the thing that I like the most about my job is just that I get to solve problems all day, whether those are technical or dealing with a business issue that my customers have. I get to learn something new all the time.
Amazing. I love when we can see the intersection between different STEM fields. So this is exciting. All right, our fourth panelist, Namrata, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Namrata Raut. So my background is completely different. I'm from biology field. So I did my undergrad from Southeast Missouri State University, PhD from Texas. So by training, I'm a neuroscientist, and I'm right now a research fellow in Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. In my field, I basically work with mouse. So what do I do is I work on the two projects. The first one is neurofibromatosis. If you guys have heard about it, it's a tumor. Usually it's benign, but it can lead to malignancy. And there are so many unknown, and one unknown is pain. How do these patients deal with pain and everything? And another one is, in a very general term, how small babies should not be treated as a human, adult human, and how they should not be treated in the same manner because they can change their nervous system. So these are the two projects I'm working on. And why I do like my field is when I get to talk to patients, and as I told you, there are still so much of unknown. And when they say that, please keep doing what you're doing, that's the most rewarding moment for me. So I want to keep doing what I'm doing.
Oh, I love that. Amazing. Thank you all for sharing a bit about your fields. They have me wanting to go back to get another degree and join your teams. All right, so I have a couple questions planned to ask you all, and we are going to go round robin. So we will ask in the same order, or have you all answer in the same order. So the first question I have for each of you is, as we think about skills, what software tools or programming languages do you consider essential for anyone considering a career in your field? So Anu.
Sure, I can go ahead and start. In mechanical engineering, if you are into design specifically, like I am, one of the very important tools is 3D modeling software. This means that you create on your computer what you want to actually see in the world. So it could be, for example, while I was designing a Kindle, I wanted to have, we had different 3D models of the back cover, the front cover, the display, all the boards that go in there, even like the resistors and everything, because part of my job is to do 3D jigsaw puzzles, right? Of how everything fits together. And when you make millions of something, because not everything is perfect, will it be more or less, or making sure one module works great, but then makes the other module work badly. So 3D modeling is something that comes very, very handy. And you don't have to, so the ones that we typically use in the industry, I would say, are things like Creo, SolidWorks, or NX. But I've worked with mentees in the past, and we've also worked on SketchUp. It's just a great way of thinking, like you have a water bottle, how do you recreate that in 3D space? So I think that is one of the key pieces of software that I personally use on a daily basis. The other one is not so well. The other one is if you're thinking of going into robotics or anything electromechanical, MATLAB is very, very helpful. I think I've used that on and off for quite some time. Even if you're rusty, it's totally fine, but it's just really helpful when you're dealing with electromechanicals. And I would say the third one is really basic, and you all probably already know it. It's just anything from Google Sheets, Google Docs, and presentations, because there's so much communication involved that it's really helpful to be able to find a way to clearly communicate what you're trying to do, what the problem is, what the solution could be, what the decisions are, everything. So those are the three from me.
Thank you. And Erin, from a sustainability standpoint, we have the same question. What software tools or programming knowledge would be essential?
What I use a lot in my field is honestly ArcGIS, which is a GIS mapping platform. And a lot of what I've done in the past and continue to do, less so now, is a lot of field verification, ground truthing. So taking a mobile GPS unit, going out, looking at things, taking GPS-enabled photos, and coming back and pulling that into the ArcGIS software and developing maps and resources to share with the engineers in terms of places to avoid, because like a lot of sustainability is on a mitigation hierarchy. So it's avoid, minimize, mitigate. So the gold standard is always to avoid impacts to resources and things. So having GIS really, really helps show engineers where not to go a lot of times. And also a lot of times it's just helpful for visualizing when we talk to communities, because that's a big part of sustainability, is talking to people and hearing their concerns about a lot of times, because railroads go through underserved communities, and you have to be aware of, we're going to be there for 150 years. So we need to be less impactful in these communities and make sure we're hearing them. We can respond to any issues they have. So that's kind of one of those things that's really, really important, and it's a great tool to have. And also the other one I would say, honestly, is Google Earth, because I pull the thing up all the time to look at what's happened in the past. What do we need to know about a place? Because it just really is a helpful tool for referencing and pulling in data sets and pictures and things like that. So those are my top two.
Nice, very fascinating. Same question for you, Michelle, which it's a little bit of a can of worms when we're talking about a broad category, but curious from your standpoint, if you think there are any tools or programming knowledge that is essential.
Sure. Yeah, I am representing a very diverse field when we call it technology. So from my perspective, as a programmer, I was specializing in C++ and C#. So basically, object-oriented programming languages based on C are always going to be good to know. You can throw Java into that mix, as well as using Python and R for data analytics. So we were doing that both in the trading space, and we use that at our current company as well. But if you're thinking about enterprise software or even working on internal applications, a lot of the important things to know are the pieces around software development. So things like source control, right? And so Git is an important tool to know. Something like Jira for tracking issues, bugs, defects, enhancements. And so most of the junior developers and interns that I see coming through don't have any exposure to that. So if you wanted to give yourself a leg up, I definitely would recommend looking into, source control and bug tracking.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking a complex area and simplifying it for us. So thank you. All right, Namrata, same question for you.
It's not very like coding heavy in our field, but we do use lots of software. For example, like as general or as common like Microsoft. I feel like we abuse it all the time, even for the Word. Then because we do lots of writing, and for journal editing and writing, we use a lot of that. Then GraphPad, whenever we have to communicate with the stats and everything. For the coding part, I would say we have very advanced electrophysiology lab setup in our lab, where we do all these like spike to and everything, where you can actually record from like how the neuron fires. So those kind, but it is like very few lab does it. So that is what I am more acquainted with.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Now, I'm hoping each of you can share an example of a typical project that you work on and some of the skills, especially those soft skills that you use in order to be effective in your job. So would you get us started again, Anu?
Sure. So I'll continue with the Kindle example. So one of the products that I was leading from mechanical side was the Kindle Touch. And this was a project that was conceived in January and needed to be in the markets around Thanksgiving, which means the mass production needed to begin in September. So 9 months from start to finish. You think of it like a school year, right? Which is an extremely short time to make something, and not just make one of something, but make millions of something. And this was one of the categories. One of the key functions of this Kindle was a lower cost, because people, the goal was to have it as a stocking stuffer, for Christmas. So given that, as a mechanical lead, so I partly explain what I do. It's a lot of like 3D modules coming together. So making sure that the display team is happy with the way the display panel is there, making sure that the main board takes as small of a place as possible, but also does not, that there are components on there that do not break in case you drop your Kindle, and things like that. So technical side aside, I think the primary thing for the technical ownership of that project that I would say was to clearly identify, since schedule was really important, 9 months was a must, and then cost was really important. As a lead, what I ended up doing was simplifying the design and talking to other teams, cross-functional teams, about how much it could weigh, how big it could be, how small it could be, and reminding folks that cost and schedule were really important. So can we simplify? Can we make things more modular so that we could independently test them, so that we didn't have like a box that was glued on all 4 sides, and we could not open to debug and root cause and fix something. So things like that did matter. We had to make a little bit of a compromise on the overall dimension. So I think that was kind of the main technical focus. In terms of soft skills, or as one of my mentors told me to call it business skills, the business skills were a lot of communication. So the team that I had was in the US was 3 mechanical engineers. We had a larger team of 3 electrical engineers, antenna engineers, display engineers, to say around 30 people and probably around 15 disciplines. And we also had our manufacturing partner in China. So, when you're working kind of around the clock, like when around this time, our 5 p.m. is, 8 a.m. in Asia, then you have to be really good about documenting your work and being very clear about what the next steps are. And it helps to be technical because, math is universal language. Pictures help quite a bit. So when I said you need to know slides, this is one of the big reasons why. To having a call to kind of hand off, hey, this was the hard problem we solved today. Here are A, B, C, D, E. You know, I'll be online for the next couple of hours. Feel free to ask me questions. We can have a call, and then handing it off. And next morning, I come in and I look at, you know, the updates from the day and understand, oh, this is where I have to pick things up from. So those were kind of so the documentation, communication, both within and outside is a very, very important skill that has served me all through my career, regardless of where it was. So I think those were the two things I would say that that were the biggest challenge, the biggest challenge and the biggest tools, I would say.
Yes, that's all very helpful. Thank you so much. And how about you, Erin? I'm going to use unused wording. Can you share about a project and those business skills that you use to do your job?
Yeah, sure. For me, there's a lot of areas we touch and a lot of things that I get involved with. And a lot of times it is super early in a project as we're trying to find a place to put these, is that here's some land that's available. So we go in and evaluate what are the impacts to threatened endangered species, water features, because there's regulated bodies, waters of the US that we have to look at. Like I said, impacts the communities, help them go down or decide. We don't tell them no, but we tell them this might be better fit. You might get this permitted faster, because that's another aspect that we work with a lot. And as opposed to this other site. So from that, then we kind of go into where we go and do a lot of writing, because I manage a lot of consultants, is putting out RFPs where we have to tell people exactly what we want them to do. And usually that's called a scope. So scope of work. And they submit it, we have to review it, we go deliberate with other groups, whether it's economic development, that they engage with the communities we're going to be putting our facilities in, or it's talking to engineering and what are the site constraints, because there's a lot of things that trains can't do, like they can't go in a circle very quickly. So we have to make sure there's enough sighting, enough track for them to go into. So there's a lot of things about negotiating and talking to, making sure everybody's issues are being heard and respecting the environment and respecting who's already there. And so from then working and managing consultants, making sure we're communicating how do we avoid these impacts? How do we incorporate what engineering's doing? So I would say there's just a lot of different skill sets and a lot of areas that we want to make sure that don't get left behind, because you have to think about those so early before you even start developing a site. As far as business skills go, I would say number one would be healthy debate and environmental, because a lot of people don't want to, with sustainability especially, because they're in their minds, they think it costs more, they think it's going to be more of a burden. So being prepared to really communicate, do debate class. It will help you in law class. I took a bunch of environmental law classes to make sure you can communicate your point and don't be afraid when people disagree. And then also, I would say just getting your soft skills, project management, making sure you're clear about what the deadlines are, communicating up the food chain with your bosses. So those are some really big areas that are important with it, and making sure you just document it, because a lot of times things change and things evolve, and making sure everyone documents why changes happen, because it happens all the time. That's one thing, nothing's ever static in any project I've ever worked on. So
thank you. Great example. How about you, Michelle?
Sure. So I'm going to use a project I did a couple of years ago where we implemented Salesforce at GATX. So this was a good example of taking a third-party piece of software and determining requirements, going all the way through implementation and then production support. And so in a project like this, there are a ton of moving parts, and no one person really can do everything, right? So a very important skill to have is collaboration, because, most of my job as a manager is making sure that other people can do their jobs. But, they have to feel like they can come to me with problems, and even if I can't help them solve it directly, I can potentially move roadblocks out of their way, know who to talk to so we can get to the root of the issue and come up with a solution. And so what plays into that is also being able to weigh pros and cons and potentially making a decision without having all of the information. So I'm a very analytical person. I would love to have pure 100% information every time that I have to move forward, but the real world doesn't work that way. So you have to get comfortable with going with your best guess with the information that is in front of you at the time. And so that is very different from what we learned in school, where they gave you a toy problem and laid out literally everything that you could possibly run into. So I think that that is something that would help a lot if you can get comfortable with that type of thing.
That is very interesting, and thank you for that insightful response. Namrata.
Talking about my project, I think everybody told about how important communication is, documentation is. I don't know if we're gonna call it soft skill or not, but troubleshooting. I feel like that's like my bread and butter right now. So we just have a paper published, and I kid you not, like for one of the experimentation that we got the edit, I had to repeat that experiments 8 times. So like, and I went from all different aspects, like how I can do this in a better way, like talking to my mentor, all the other folks in the lab and everybody. So I would say troubleshooting and asking questions. Never, ever hesitate that how can you improve in doing that experimentation so that you can get what you were looking for. It's not going to work. So as I told you, like 8 times, one experiment just to get one image that I can put in the publication. So troubleshooting is like, I feel like the soft skill. If you want to be in STEM for across the field, I feel like that would be your skill that you want to have, and never ever hesitate to ask questions. So those 2 things has helped me. And I think that also develop your leadership role, because that was given to me, like when I joined this, like I'm in Jankowski lab and he is paint, like big name in paint and everything. And he told me that it's not that I know everything. If you feel like you want to learn something differently, go and talk to folks, go and talk to other people. And that is so like amazing that you are in one place, but he's like, you are open to go and improve yourself, go and talk to other researchers and see how you can develop in a better way, because I do not know everything. And coming from that, like such a big caliber neuroscientist is something that, oh, wow, that's so cool to hear from your own mentor. So.
Yes. Thank you so much. And it's really neat to hear from all 4 of you, because there's so much overlap between what each of you are saying consistently across the board. I heard collaboration, I heard curiosity, a lot of C's here, communication, and also being okay with some ambiguity, right? Not knowing all the answers. So thank you all. I am going to ask one last joint question that anyone can answer, or multiple of you, but we get this question a whole lot. So we have a room full of high achieving students here who really want to be prepared and want to get their dream job. They are all being told, get an internship, and there are not as many internships as there are students. So my question for you is, do you guys have any advice on how to land an internship, or if they don't, something else that they could do instead so that they are marketable when they start applying for jobs? It's a tough question.
I can go ahead and start just to keep the rhythm the same. Yes, I think internships are extremely important, and they definitely set you apart. And what I would say, like general, think of the people that you can get an internship, like who I had reached out to. Mentors, I think Magic Mentors is a great place. Your seniors in schools, maybe seniors who you were like, hey, that's a very interesting thing that they're doing. How did they get there? Your teachers, your family, friends. somebody's brother's cousin. If you're curious about what somebody is doing and you're just like, hey, it sounds very interesting, but I don't know what that actually means. I found that a lot of people are willing to talk to you, right? And say, hey, it's not, and generally if you've had genuine curiosity, like, I've heard of this and this is kind of what I like doing. I think there might be, some way that I can get from here to there, or maybe not, but I would love to pick your brain. Most people do say yes. So that's another thing. The other thing I would say is conferences. If there are, I think that's probably more applicable to undergrad, but there's a lot of conferences like Grace Hopper, women and Society of Women Engineers, a NESB conference for Black engineers. There's a lot of places where you can at least find out about what things you're considering and what you're interested in, right? And I don't underestimate LinkedIn. I would actually, even now today, I tell people if there's somebody looking for a job, it's like, hey, go on LinkedIn and tell me who do you see is somebody that is, either doing really well or somebody you admire or is in a company that you like or is doing work that you think you might want to get to. And that does help, because that then takes something that that helps you go reverse and just see like, oh, here are the other things that they're doing, and maybe that's important, maybe that's not, maybe that's how they got there, but it kind of expands your search potential a little bit. And I would say I completely understand there are not enough internships. Personal projects are a great way to demonstrate your interest, right? There's one thing about saying that, hey, I really like music, and there's another thing about, hey, here's a music stand that I made out of cardboard because I just did not have enough. I did not get the one that I wanted. The demonstrating that interest through anything. It could be sketches, it could be cardboard, it could be 3D printing, it could be 3D CAD, it could just be like, here's a bunch of, research that I did about this problem. And, and here is pros and cons, or like, here's a decision matrix, what I would do. Demonstrating that interest. I think internships are a great real world example. If you cannot do that, then go towards your interest and see what, are you curious about something there? Are you, can you do something there to demonstrate your interest, whatever form that might be in? Because that also sets you apart, and especially if you're talking to people and you're going in interviews, your passion will shine through, and you're the expert at something that you made, right? So you'll be able to answer questions or give background very confidently. So that, like, it's all win-win in that situation. Anyway, those are my 2 cents. I'll let the other mentors chime in here.
Oh, that's so great. And really, to summarize what I heard you say, it's really about differentiating yourself, finding people that can help you connect to an internship, whether that's on LinkedIn or through anyone in your community, a neighbor, a friend, family. Everyone is your network. They don't have to be only somebody you know in a professional setting. And in lieu of gaining some kind of internship, it's really just demonstrating your interest and taking that initiative to create a project on your own. So does anyone have something they can add to that? I see Michelle, you're up. You want to add?
Yeah, I mean, that answer was incredibly comprehensive. So I'm basically just going to say, yes, I agree, and give some anecdotal evidence that Anu's method works. Like, I actually got my first internship by finding an alum from my college who had my same degree, and this is going to date me. I wrote her a letter, and she said, oh, we don't have an internship at our company, but you seem really interesting, so why don't you come in? And they actually created a program so that I was able to do an internship there, and that launched my career. So it was a long shot, but definitely worth the risk, and the cost of a stamp. And now you can just do it for free via email.
That's awesome. Karen.
Oh, I was going to say, the other avenue I've done, which is really helpful, is I would just start Googling volunteer opportunities, because there's a lot of things around your community that are really helpful in getting to engage with people who can direct you or point you. And also it gives you some hands-on experience if some areas that you like. So I know for me, there was a community garden that was being maintained at one of the parks near me. And it was all about xeriscaping, which is using less water. and kind of getting up on the Saturdays and talking to these people and seeing their interests and kind of connecting with them was really helpful. I mean, I was the youngest person by like 30 years when I did it, but it was really, really helpful to see what people have got going on and just get some exposure to what's out there. And I also volunteer a lot. There's always community events for us. There's a arts event, but connecting with people and finding different ways to plug in sustainability is a really great opportunity, because the number one thing about sustainability, it's a mindset, it's a framework you use and apply to everything. So if you can say, hey, could we do this? A lot of times they're really open and willing to work with you and say, hey, do you want to come on and help support us? And then you've got a role, maybe it's not paid, but an opportunity to practice those skills and talk to communities and get involved in different ways.
Wonderful. And both of those were great examples of showing initiative and just asking for what you want. So I love that. And Namrata?
Yeah, I was about to chime in, but already Erin told that. But yeah, volunteer opportunities are a great way to look into. Right now, like in our lab, we have a high schooler who was interested in doing some like hands-on experiment in like bench wet lab. And so she directly approached to our PI and says like, hey, not for like college application or anything, but I seriously want to see how wet lab works and everything. And she's my mentee at lab right now. But she directly reached out. She didn't know anybody. She said that, I just went to CCHMC. I work in Cincinnati Children. So she just went over there and she was like, what are the fun labs? She just did that. And she approached like that Mike. And that's how it started. So you can, Googling is good way.
Love it. Love it. Another case of taking an initiative and just asking for what you want. And it's surprising how often you'll get a yes. So thank you all so much for answering all my questions. I'm excited to open it up and allow all of our attendees to ask questions themselves. And I know Artie, you all in that room, I think are logging off in just a bit. So if you have any questions, absolutely take yourself off of mute and ask away so that we don't stop your coding project. And in the meantime, anyone is welcome to take themselves off of mute and ask, or drop a question in the chat here, and we'll and Katie, if you can monitor that chat and let us know when a question's in there.
Hi, thank you so much. This has been extremely informative. I just wanted to ask and see what different intersections of various disciplines look like in each of your fields. I feel like now as a high school student going more into like the college process and everything, and having to think more about like classes to take and like different majors. I mean, I still have some time, but it's still like creeping up on me. Like what opportunities are there to combine like different like biological sciences, engineering, sustainability? I feel like I found definitely also like computer science. I found a lot of what you all have said to be like very like things I've been very interested in. And I was wondering if there were some connections that you already talked about, but like other more in-depth like career opportunities and whatnot within each of your fields.
Great question. And if any of you have an answer, take yourselves off mute. Namrata.
I just heard biology, so it just clicked me. So I was like, I'll say going fast. So you talked about how there is interconnection right now, at least in the biology, we cannot do something in vacuum. It is so much collaboration in there, like not only within the biology itself, within the neuroscience, like we have some from the cancer field, somebody from the pain field. And when we make all these equipment that I was telling you, we do electrophysiology, they are all made by engineers. We cannot make it. Like once something is there, we have to troubleshoot. And at the end, if we are not able to, they need to come, and their role is very important. So it is very interdisciplinary. Like even when we do the project, we always see that what are the equipment we're going to use? Can we troubleshoot it if it is not working? For example, even setting up microscope and everything. So it is very much interdisciplinary now, at least in the biology I can talk about. I'm sure for other field also, but I have seen so much of chemists, biochemists, engineers from different background coming and working together. And for the career option, when you're even for going for the job, when you say you have like all these skills where you have some from biology, some from like engineering background, you are up on the ladder for the job perspective too.
Thank you.
I can maybe talk about mechanical engineering next. And like I said, mechanical engineering is just so broad that you can work in many different industries, and each industry you can work in many, many different roles. Especially, I would say, given self-driving cars, electric vehicles, robotics, that actually is a very interdisciplinary field in terms of electromechanical, in terms of working with, say, motors and building it together and coding it, right? So to me, that is one of the most interdisciplinary things that you can do. And a lot of innovation actually on the mechanical side, I think, is happening in that area. So people are looking not just for mech eng degree or BS in engineering. They're also looking for BS in physics. So ultimately, mechanical engineering is applied physics. So I think it's a lot of different skills that do come together, and it depends on what niche you're trying to look at, right? Like you can, again, with a mechanical background, you can work for medical devices because there is design that's needed there. You can work in test engineering because you need to understand how fixtures and jigs and test equipment is made. You can work in manufacturing, and you need to, your specialization is going to be how do you make millions of something and consistently make something. You could do process engineering. So what I see, like, the discipline as is like, hey, you get your depth in one area, and then you try and figure out what are other areas that you're interested in, and that this kind of depth can be applied to, and that's kind of how you start branching out. But you could also do the reverse, like you said, Leela, yeah, and you can start with, here are 2 areas of interest that I have, and I'm going to try and find, either schools or projects or companies or people that I can talk to and think about what I can do with these interests of mine or these skills of mine. So you can kind of go both ways.
Great point. And I will add in there that ChatGPT is great for that. If you were to drop into ChatGPT, I really love physics and coding and engineering. What careers might I consider? You might find those, and then you'll know maybe I major in one and minor in another, and see if I do enjoy it. But ChatGPT can be a good friend for that. Wonderful.
I'm just going to jump in on sustainability. Number one, I would say is honestly, all engineering fields intersect with sustainability. That, like I said, since I always try and tell people, it's a framework and it's a applied mindset. So you have to be able to think through different problems in different areas, because a lot of it goes down to very granular things and very large scale things. So a lot of stuff people work in sustainable sourcing, because like the railroad, we have ballast. So where are we going to put that rock? Where did the rock come from? How far away is that rock coming? We need to talk about logistics and engineering in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what products we're willing to test and put on there, make sure it's safe. And then, so sustainability, I think the other thing I would say for it is don't be afraid to kind of try a little bit of everything, because I will say I have a very diverse path. I worked in ag, I've worked in environmental permitting. I did my master's in ag, and all of that stuff. Like I thought, oh, this is not going to come in handy. But because I have such a diverse background, I have a lot more like ideas and things to pull from. And a lot of times that's what people need in these different new evolving spaces, is that we need somebody with a different mindset or way to approach a problem. And that's what a lot of it is. It's just problem solving, because you're trying to change the paradigm and do something different with sustainability. So that's what I would say.
Love it. Great points.
And Erin, actually, to build on that, I would say that in mechanical sustainability, in devices, especially consumer devices, sustainability has become such a big pillar in the past few years. Everything from using resin and recycling metal, and the post-consumer recycle content, how we're making the supply chain, everything. So there really is a lot of overlap in a lot of different fields, and it is really helpful and encouraging to see that.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Artie, I know you all have to jump off. Is there any questions from your group that you'd like to ask before you move on to your coding project?
Anyone? I think we actually don't have any questions. We'll probably jump off. Thank you so much, Hollis. That was amazing. Thank you to all the participants. I definitely learned a lot. I think we all learned a lot. And yeah, we were going to jump into our coding activity now.
Wonderful. The rest of us will stay on and continue answering questions, but thank you again for coordinating this, Artie, and we're so excited to see what you all create together.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely share with you all. Bye.
Wonderful. Bye. What other questions do we have from our attendees for our amazing panelists? No, Emma jumped off. Yes, go for it, Lila.
So has collaboration within each of your fields been pretty like a smooth process, or is it really a lot of figuring stuff out as you're going along, like within smaller or larger groups?
I can jump in. So I think it depends on the groups that you're working with. So when you are working with a smaller group where you know all of the personalities, you tend to know where potential pitfalls are and how to avoid them. But you have to get to that point sometimes by making some missteps. And I've found that a lot of what smooths that out is admitting when you make a mistake, telling how you're going to improve, so that hopefully you don't make that same mistake again. Thanking other people for their contributions, because we're all interconnected and we can't do this alone. And being respectful of other people's cultures, backgrounds, lived experiences. Assuming that there's not going to be one particular way to communicate with everybody that is going to get the best results from that person. And just in general, being respectful, showing up with the base assumption that everyone is there to get a job done and to work together, and just giving people grace and the benefit of the doubt.
Great advice. And also wonderful question too. I think the school projects that you do are reality, right? You don't always have everyone on the same page, and it can be complicated and easier if you just did it by yourself. But the reality is, we can go farther together, and that's a wonderful question. Great.
Yeah, I was just going to add also documentation, because a lot of times people think they know something, and or they don't or they have questions, and maybe they're genuinely just curious about what you did. If you can show them how you got to your answer, a lot of times that resolves a lot of conflict, is having the documentation to show why you came to your conclusion or how you did it. So that's always really important to make sure you take good notes, communicate well, save your emails.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to build on that. That basically works a lot, like showing your rationale. So whether that's a decision matrix saying, hey, I prioritize ABC because of this information that I had today, and this is the basis of my decision. So that helps not only to make a decision right now, but if sometimes projects are years long or decades long, right? It helps other people who are going to be working on that to understand why some decisions were made and what is different now. So all of those things definitely help. And building on Michelle's idea, generally assuming good intent is great. People are here to solve something together. And, if we don't all, if we say there seems to be a conflict, a healthy conflict is a good thing, because we're all trying to do the best, from our point of view, right? That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. But yeah, being respectful and having a common shared goal based on here are our assumptions. I think that really goes a long way in resolving or getting everybody on the same page.
Great points.
I also want to build on all these were amazing point because I'm also learning from all these mentor myself because my field is different and how all of you work together is such a it's amazing to hear from all the different background of STEM. Talking about the Lila's point, like shared goal is optimal. And what I would say from my collaboration, we have different collaboration within the institution. Sometimes when you get the question, they genuinely don't know, so they have questions. So it is not always like they are asking you just to create trouble or something like that. So ask, why was this question intended? Because there have been so many times when I present or something, not everybody is from pain field. They do not even know some basic point, and they will ask you. And in my head, I'll be like, oh, why did they ask? And then I'll be going back and I'll be like, oh, this is my different field. So sometimes they do have a question in a genuine way and they want to learn from you. So it is not always like they're doing that for the creating a trouble or something like that.
Great points. And I think great depiction of the assuming good intent, right? That everyone has the same shared goal in mind. So love it. Well, we have time for final question. If anybody wants to chime in here, and Lila, you are more than welcome. You're asking wonderful questions to ask our final question if you'd like. And I don't know if Ria or Katie, if either of you have a question and want to jump in, you are welcome as well.
Oh, so I guess if nobody else has another question, I have another one. So what is it like to, you spoke about this a little bit before about taking initiative, but what has your experience been with that? Or has it really been advocating for yourself? Has that been really instrumental in, I guess, your careers or your education?
What a thoughtful question. I like that one. And I wonder, as you're answering this too, if you have a real life example like Michelle you had earlier, I think those are really helpful to see that in practicality.
I can go ahead with that one with the real life, like myself. If I talk about the initiative. So when I was doing my PhD, I was mostly focused in central nervous system. I myself didn't knew anything about the peripheral nervous system and pain and everything. So during my PhD period, that's when I took an initiative and got to work with, again, collaboration came in picture, and I got to work with the pain lab in Everett lab in TW. And that was my initiative. I wanted to learn about what is going on with the pain. I was so focused in central nervous system. And then when I got my PhD, I was looking everywhere for the job. And this is, I would say, you were talking about the crossing over with the different field and everything. That is when it came in picture. And now I'm doing my fellowship in the pain lab. So it was my real life experience that I took the initiative. It was scary that I invested my entire graduate studies in one field. I'm learning a lot. I have my own hiccup, my pitfalls, and I'm sometimes I'm crying too, but then I took that initiative and I'm not regretting, I would say. I am loving it, what I'm doing right now on a broader perspective.
Wonderful. And that's also, I also heard in that as you were sharing the example, I think all of, we often think that when we go to college, that we get our degree in something and that is it. When in reality, many of us pivot and learn new things and go different ways. So really neat. Anyone else have an example of how important initiative is in your field?
I can go. Next, I have multiple examples. I'll start with the first one. In my first job, there was one technology. This was in India, and I was designing a fuel pump. And as part of a fuel pump, there was a pump technology. And I had this really super senior lead, very knowledgeable, tons of experience. there was one thing that we had to implement, and this lead was just like, hey, this is not going to work. Like, this is a theoretical thing. It's not going to work. And very, I mean, with a very positive intent, saying that, hey, here are some other avenues that we could pursue. And I think then, respectfully, I was like, let's try and get the data to answer this question, and quickly design an experiment, got the data, showed it to presented it to everybody. Again, here are the assumptions, here are the results, here are the calculations, here's the theory, here's how much it deviates. And that technology basically got implemented in the product, right? So I think initiative is also being it's not being difficult for the sake of being difficult or disagreeing. I actually do think disagreeing is perfectly fine, and it should be encouraged because you get more ideas. It's the way that you say it and how you even now I just like let the data, let's look at the data. Do we have any data that supports this argument? Helps quite a bit. It takes like emotions out of the argument and forces everybody to say, oh, here are our assumptions, here is why we're asking this question, here are our concerns. So that is another way of I guess taking initiative. It can be done multiple ways, but that's one thing. And yeah, always advocating for yourself. Even you are your biggest advocate. Like, you have to be for yourself. You're your biggest cheerleader. It is amazing to have amazing mentors and folks around, but you still have to raise your hand and say, hey, I want to do this. And I do think that's a very important thing to put out in the world, so that you are then aligned with the opportunity. If nobody knows what you're interested in, then it's really hard for them to connect or help you.
I want to add one thing. Anu, when you said data, I read it in somewhere in the conference. Thermo Fisher has this tagline that the moment data change your mind, we work for that moment. That resonates so much with what you said right now.
Yeah, there was another one that says, in God we trust, everybody else must bring data. I think one of my coworkers had that. So
Love it. So anecdotally, my mentor has always told me the biggest thing standing in the way of you and what you want is your unwillingness to ask for it. So asking for what you want, it's so surprising how often it leads to something great. So love it.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I would say from a advocating for yourself standpoint would be just ask what projects are going on. Like at work, a lot of times they just keep putting you into projects because they're like, oh, you do this well. Like, you should just keep doing this project. And sometimes if you don't want to do it anymore, it just takes the conversation and going, hey, I know there's other opportunities, there's other jobs. I want to go work on these, or I want to at least have opportunity. And a lot of times the answer is, oh, we had no idea. So a lot of times it's just a feedback loop that you've got to break sometimes, because I know several times in my life, in my career, I got good at something, but maybe it wasn't the thing I wanted to do. And having to put a break on that is really, really important.
Very wise. Wonderful. Well, we have come to the end of our time here. I want to thank all four of you for joining and sharing your wisdom. Not only did it help everyone who joined today, but we are sending this out to a very large group of people who wish they could be here. And I cannot wait to hear their feedback and learnings from this conversation. And thank you to Lila too. You had really thoughtful questions, and I can already tell showing initiative and asking for what you want will be something you can do for sure. So I hope you all have a great night, and I will send this recording out to you all too so that you can hear it. Thank you. Wonderful.
thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Michelle,
Bye.
Thanks.
Namrata.
Bye.